what's poppin', y'all? UK hitmaker KSI, who decided to take a little break from his music career after spawning the modern day version, or well, like we in 2020, right? We had YBN Demir Soul Train, and then, well, not 2020, but you guys get it. In the early stages of the 2020s, we had YBN Demir's Soul Train, and that version for KSI was Thick of It. That came out in 2025. That was one of the biggest memed songs everywhere. And whenever I hear that title, I can't help but think of the Backyardigans jingle of Into the Thick of It. But he did this song with Trippie Redd, and he was asked recently in an interview. KSI has been locked in on his YouTube grind as of the past year, really going hard on that. And he got asked about what artist was the most annoying to work with, because they've done a lot of music with, or they as an artist have done a lot of music with him. He's collaborated with Lil Pump, he's collaborated with Smoke Burp, he's collaborated with Lil Wayne, he's collaborated with Rick Ross. So all of these guys, you're probably thinking, okay, so who's the worst? Well, I'm gonna play you guys this clip right now.
Who you collabed with where you just wanted to leave halfway through filming? Like you were just fed up?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably say Trippie Redd. I remember when we filmed the music video, Wake Up Call. Bro, he was like 7-8 hours. It was very late. And then he came to the shoot and he just stayed in the car.
What?
He just stayed in the car and he was just smoking away. And I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you're late and now you're just taking the piss. So it got to a point where I just was like, I just didn't want him to be there, but eventually went out and we did our thing, and that's that. But yeah, I'd say Trippie Redd was one of the most frustrating people to work with for sure. Compared to like a musician and compared to like an actor, with YouTubers, you have to be likable because you're in front of the camera all the time.
So Trippie Redd would respond to this, and he would respond in the comment section, putting a bunch of burger emojis, and then he would respond in an IG story. So yeah, Trippie Redd's for sure speaking facts, because KSI is not only hard to listen to, he is very, 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 very hard to. It's like nails on a chalkboard listening to KSI music. But one thing that I have to ask, two things. We have to go in on Trippie Redd here, because this is one of the most irritating things about rappers as a whole. But first off, with KSI. KSI is talking about his Dissimulation album, which was, if you guys remember, in the beginning of 2020, KSI kind of disappeared. He blacked out his profile. He just stopped uploading. I think he privated or unlisted the majority of his YouTube videos. And then he came back with an album. On this album was Offset, Lil Pump, Smoke Perp, Tion Wayne, Jeremiah. Trippie Redd was one of them, Rick Ross, and Lil Baby. So keep in mind, he's saying that out of this whole crew, the worst one to work with was Trippie Redd. But keep in mind also, 2020 Trippie Redd is a different story from 2025 Trippie Redd. 2020 Trippie Redd was on a roll. He had multiple hits under his belt. 6ix9ine was like, he had won the beef at that point in time. Like, he had just dropped so much music in the time that 6ix9ine was locked up. And even after 6ix9ine came back with a hit, he didn't really come back and hit the ground running with like song after song after song. And I think he was like moving on to Spanish type of music. So Trippie Redd here was feeling himself, but I can't help but think in 2020, you guys remember what also dropped in 2020? No, you guys probably don't remember because I made a mistake. It was 2021. It had to be 2021, Mr. Rage. So for a Trippie Redd, is Trippie Redd going to be 7 hours late and just all around be an annoying individual to work with for a Playboi Carti? Keep in mind, this is post Die Lit and also post, not Love is Rage, post Whole Lotta Red Carti. So rappers have this, it's almost similar to when people online talk about like, oh man, these rappers, they know who to try. They, like, for example, like they'll say Academics, or Academics will say himself, like, yo, I know Meek Mill's not like that, so that's why I'll say I'll run it with him. I know Lil Baby's not like that, but I also know Pooh Shiesty is like that, so I'm not gonna mess with him. And I also know Blueface will put hands on me, so I'm not gonna mess with him. So it's like that, and they usually say this about gangster rappers too, which is like, yo, rappers know who to mess with. But I also think from an industry perspective, it's similar too, where there are certain rappers that are professional all around the board and they're always getting their stuff done. Like it seemed like when he did the Lil Wayne thing, that worked out perfectly. Granted, Lil Wayne is my GOAT, but he has known to be a little bit difficult to work with at times, especially with performances and stuff. But he showed up to this music video shoot and he got this music video shoot done. So he's certainly about his paper. But Trippie Redd here, like I said, he wasn't going to do this with a Travis Scott. You think he pulled up late when Travis Scott first collaborated with Trippie Redd? Hell no, he didn't show up late. Or when Diplo hit him up? I highly doubt that. But seeing KSI as a YouTuber, some people just want to finesse him. That's why I also think like KSI, he had to show some level of respect. Well, number one, I don't even know why he worked with Lil Pump and Smoke Perp in 2020. That was probably the biggest feature that they ever got, or the biggest bag that they got that year. Certainly had to come from KSI's music. But then, if he's talking about Trippie Redd like this, then why did you guys work together again? Because they're talking about a song from 2020, Wake Up Call. So here KSI is saying that Trippie Redd was the worst person to work with. He showed up so late, yet you guys are working together when you dropped the Thick of It song. And when Thick of It came out, which was in 2024, he posted and he said, I was held hostage to do this. If this doesn't hit 20 million views the first month, KSI won't let me go. Please free me. So here is KSI, who complained about Trippie Redd. Well, he's talking about the situation now. But if you had such a terrible experience with Trippie Redd, who you clearly paid a bag, Trippie Redd taxed him, or Trippie Redd's management, or whoever, they for sure taxed him and you have to tax a KSI, especially in 2020, because there is a reputational risk that the artist like Trippie Redd is taking by being on a quote-unquote Joker's album. If you guys remember years before this, Jake Paul, he had gotten Gucci Mane on a feature. And the reason that Gucci Mane did the feature was because Gucci Mane's kids were fans and viewers of Jake Paul's vlogs and their content. So they were like, yo, you should really do this. And they paid him a big bag. But a lot of rappers, even if the money was right, they're looking at it like, yo, if I'm standing next to Jake Paul or Logan Paul, I'm going to look corny. My brand's going to take a hit and people are not going to mess with me. Now, this is a little bit different now because there's just a lot more music coming out and stuff like this can just go under the radar or not get as much attention. So that's the tax that a KSI has to pay, or anybody that's not taken seriously in music. And with trash music like KSI's, although that song with Lil Wayne was pretty good, to be fair, Lil Wayne's part at least, KSI's, he just needed somebody else to sing that, or the original person who wrote the reference track for him. Now, if he was the one that actually laid down that track, well, he should have given it as a reference to somebody else. So I'll still give him credit, but he should not have been performing that song for sure. So I'm wondering what happened for KSI to work with Trippie Redd again, because you can't complain about this guy. And this is where I say Trippie Redd's kind of got a point, because he's looking at it like, no, we just worked the other year, like a year and a half, 2 years ago on this track. And you're talking about a track from 5 years ago. So if we were cool with this, and Trippie Redd did not really, there was a lot of hate on Thick of It. Trippie Redd could have came out and said, man, he just paid me a big bag. I didn't even want to work with this guy. Oh, this was clearly a move for me to just make money, because this was a bad song. This got a really bad reception. Now, it does have 100 million plus streams, but for Trippie Redd, this isn't even one of Trippie Redd's biggest songs. Like I said, if you look at Trippie Redd's catalog, his stuff streams. If you look at Trippie Redd's top most popular songs on Spotify, it's nowhere to be found? Thick of It. However, if you look at KSI's, the number one song on there on most popular, which isn't by all-time streams. So for example, when you go to Spotify and you go to Trippie Redd's profile, you'll see most popular. That's the most popular songs that are currently being streamed. So F Love, for instance, that's got multiple billions, but people are replaying that now. It doesn't go by all time. But for KSI, like for example, Holiday has more streams than Thick of It, but it's second on the list for KSI. But Trippie Redd, the feature, Thick of It, is being streamed more right now. So there's more longevity, if you want to call it that, for Thick of It. That's kind of how like the popular section of a rapper or musician's Spotify profile looks like. So Trippie Redd is on there and he's the number one. So more than any other rapper you worked with. Like he even did a song with Lil Durk. So it's interesting to hear that Lil Durk was easy to work with as well. So I'm wondering, did Trippie Redd just mature and it got better to work with him then? And for KSI, if this was true, he should have at least made a note where he said, like, yeah, but we did Thick of It after that, and he was very professional, and the music video shoot went great for that one. Because there's a reason why you did Thick of It. There's a reason why you work with Trippie Redd again. Like, it couldn't be, I want to know that reason. That should have been a follow-up question, but I think this interview, this would have been a follow-up question from somebody that is tapped into music and follows it to ask him, because they're like, yo, what's going on with that? And then he would have given his credit. So I understand to a degree why Trippie Redd feels a certain type of way. I would just like it from his perspective. Like, yo, why did you end up doing Thick of It? Or why is he calling him a burger, number one? And does he feel disrespected because he did Thick of It and didn't talk trash about it and down it? Because Trippie Redd had the right to disassociate with KSI. The song Thick of It and how much terrible reception it was getting, it was like a Soul Train. So if Trippie Redd said, yo, like, that ain't even my song, like, I just got a crazy bag, we would all understand. We wouldn't call Trippie Redd a scumbag or none of that. Because also, the way that the song is received by the public, you can never know before the song drops. Like, when YBN Namir was recording Soul Train and the engineer was playing it back to him, he was like, oh, this is the one. That's really what he thought. And then it ended up being the one, but not the one that you wanted. But let me know what y'all think about this in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all in the next one.